All right, so here we go with chapter one, part two. We're still looking at the prehistoric era, and let's talk about the people who lived during the Paleolithic period, which we normally call them hunter-gatherers or hunter-foragers. So we're going to start looking at their society and their culture. Now, it's important, of course, to realize that this is prehistoric people. That means that there were no written records. So historians, there's nothing really that historians can say or know about this. Instead, historians rely on the works of anthropologists and archaeologists who study not written records like historians do, but study artifacts, what physical stuff these people leave behind. So whether it's jewelry or clothing or their bone structures, their fossils, their homes, right? These are the things that they have, the physical remains of these people. And anthropologists and archaeologists kind of piece together these things that are found all over the world to kind of come up with this picture of what it was like to live during the Paleolithic time, right? During the hunter-gatherer time. So what we know about one of the things we know about them is that they were egalitarian, right? Which is basically meaning that they're equal, at least economically speaking. And the fact is that because they were constantly moving from point A to point B to point C in search of food, right? Because they're following the animals and the animals are migrating themselves, these humans, they did not have a lot of personal possessions, right? A lot of material wealth. So they didn't have like, houses or chairs or furniture because you would constantly be on the move. So there was no wealth or poor. There was no rich class, upper class, and poor class. Everyone was more or less economically equal. And doesn't mean that some people were more like socially higher. Like if you were like a tribal leader, you would have more responsibilities because you're the leader, but you also have more privileges. And generally, you're chosen amongst your members, amongst your tribal members, based on your abilities or based on your wisdom, as if you're like an older person. So these Paleolithic individuals, again, these societies, they were egalitarian. It's an important word. Another way that they were equal is that they treated or they viewed women to be equal as men. And this comes from the fact that women produced pretty much as food as the men. So that we use the term hunter-gatherer, hunter-forager. Well, the men generally worked together to go out and hunt, while the women stayed behind. And not only did they take care of the kids, the children, they also foraged. They also gathered, right? Whether it's fruits and nuts and seeds and roots and wild grains, right? Wild grasses. And so they provided more or less, sometimes more, many times more, like 50% of the food that would be consumed. And therefore, they had that equal status, right? Because they provided as much as the men. And there was a lot of respect. There wasn't no a lot of respect in the status of women. They weren't considered lower than men in any way. Now, the society focused, these hunter-gatherers, they would organize themselves into bands, right? So bands would be about 40, 50 people. And many times they're like relatives of yours, your cousins, and so on. And they would travel around looking for food, right? And it wasn't that they're just walking randomly. There were specific places that they knew that, this is where there's trees with fruits, and this is where it's easy to fish, and so on. And basically, these groups were able to provide everything that they need. That's something we call self-sufficient, right? You can make everything that you possibly need. So they'll make their own clothing, they'll make their own weapons, their own tools, get their own food, and so on. But sometimes these different tribes or these different hunting bands will interact with each other, and therefore they would exchange information. So they'll tell them, "Oh, look, the waters over there are clean, or the river over there is not clean, so don't drink from there." Or this is a bow. Let me show you how to use the bow and arrow, which makes it easier to hunt. So they could exchange ideas. And of course, you could exchange people and not like sell them as slaves or anything, but like you can choose to marry, a person from a different tribe, and you could join their tribe, or they join yours. So we see a lot of interaction. This is what allows a lot of knowledge to be spread. Um, uh, basically as humans migrate around the world. Now, a lot of people think that hunter-gatherers, that their lives were boring, that their lives were, tiring because all they do is, work and look for food. But compared to modern day humans, they work less on average. Um, and that means that they would have a lot of spare time, especially in the night. So we see that they had an active imagination, as humans do. They will tell stories, they'll come up with myths, and act them out, right, in caves or in huts or whatever it is that they built. And basically, these stories and this mythology that they developed will be the foundation of the earliest forms of religious beliefs, right? That will become much more complex over time. Now, one of the most important artifacts that we've seen in multiple societies around the world is something called the Venus, right? The Venus statuette. And basically, we see these different types of statues in different parts of the world, and we see kind of the exaggerated features of a woman who's probably pregnant in the statue. And the idea was that this is something that you would create, or you would build, or construct, or carve out of stone in hopes of having your wife, or having your mother, your sister, your daughter to be fertile, meaning that they can reproduce. And it shows us that there was a great value in that responsibility, that ability of women to give birth, right? And therefore continue on the lineage of humans from one generation to the next. And again, what is unique about this statue is that we've seen it in different parts of the world. So that means that across the world, this was, across geographic boundaries, but across the world, we see this value, this respect, this honoring of women, right? And this kind of like hope that there is a goddess out there, that's why it's called the Venus goddess, or the Venus statuette, that will protect women um, when they're pregnant or when they're ready to give birth. Now we also see cave paintings, and this is one of the most famous cave paintings in the world. It is in the caves in France, and these are called the Lascaux cave paintings. And you see very, very detailed, naturalistic types of art, right? So you can imagine that the humans who painted these, right? We see another one here. Um, they're trying to express themselves, right? That's what art is, right? It's a self-expression of ourselves. And what they value. If you look at this picture, they value the animals, right? They're painting deer, it seems, or horses maybe, because that is what they hunt. That's what they survive on. So of course, that's going to be the focus, right? Or they value themselves, right? You see this picture of the handprints, right? They value themselves, they value their identity, right? Trying to represent who they are as people, as individuals. Now, some archaeologists, some anthropologists have come up with the idea that these cave paintings, it wasn't just artwork, but it was a kind of like a form of magic, an attempt that if they draw the animal on the cave, it will magically appear next time they go hunt, right? So it's kind of like a way to summon the animal spirit to the world, to the physical world, in order for it to get hunted. Now, another thing we know we have found, of course, are the burial mounds, right? Where humans died and then they get buried by their friends and their family, and they get buried with their possessions, whether it's their clothes, jewelry, trinkets, weapons, tools, right? And that tells us that there is a value to these things, right? These possessions are valuable because we're burying them with our loved ones, and they're going to take them into the next world, into the afterlife. Right? So again, this is an indication of religious belief, because why would he take the time to properly bury someone and dig a grave, right? If you didn't believe that it was a necessary process in entering the next world, or in the afterlife. Now, so when it comes to the religious beliefs, we know, or we assume, because again, there's no 100% way of knowing, that these people are follow the religion that we now know as animists, right? And an animist is basically someone who believes that there are spirits all over nature, right? So the trees have spirits, the river has a spirit, all the animals have spirits, and even inanimate objects like rocks have spirits. And that you can pray to these spirits to help you, right? You can pray to the river, to the sky, or to the sun, and you can communicate, or and not everyone, but the priest can communicate and ask for assistance on behalf of the community and behalf of the hunting tribe. All right, so that's part two. I'll see you back for part three.